A young girl vanished from her home without a trace, prompting one of the largest searches in American history. Over the course of 62 years, detectives faced numerous shocking twists in their quest for answers before finally uncovering the truth. Candace Rogers, known as Candy, was born on July 18, 1949, in Spokane, Washington. As an only child, she lived with her mother following her parents' divorce. Though she frequently saw her father, who stayed in the same city, Candy was a typical, lively child who enjoyed playing outside with friends, spending time in nature, and dreaming of joining the Campfire Girls, a popular organization for girls similar to the Boy Scouts. In 1959, at the age of 9, Candy was thrilled to join the Campfire Girls. Part of her responsibilities included selling mints door to door. On Friday, March 6th after school, Candy went out with about 8 boxes of mints. She planned to visit neighbors and sell the sweets. Other girls were assigned different streets to avoid overlapping routes. When Candy hadn't returned by 6 p.m., her mother grew concerned and, along with Candy's grandfather, began searching the neighborhood. They were soon joined by family friends and neighbors, but despite their efforts, Candy was nowhere to be found. The police were called as darkness fell, signaling that something might have gone terribly wrong. The police immediately began their investigation, questioning neighbors, and discovering that Candy had only sold 1 box of mints. This suggested something had happened to her soon after leaving home. A witness claimed to have seen Candy on a nearby street around 6:30 p.m., but by then, her mother was already out searching. Candy's grandfather reported a near miss with a speeding green 1953 Ford, but the police couldn't track down the vehicle. At 9 p.m., several mint boxes were found scattered along the road near a bridge, increasing the urgency of the search. The police focused on the area, including both riverbanks and a small wooded zone, but were unable to find Candy. By morning, the case had garnered statewide media attention, as child disappearances were extremely rare in 1959, deeply unsettling the community. The next day, the search intensified with additional officers, mounted police, off-road vehicles, and military personnel. Over 1,000 volunteers participated, making it one of the most extensive searches in the country's history. Despite the massive effort, no trace of Candy was found. Tragically, a helicopter involved in the search crashed after hitting power lines, killing 3 crew members. For days, search efforts continued, with police working around the clock and receiving approximately 750 tips, all of which led to dead ends. On the 15th day, 2 military members on a hunting trip discovered children's shoes in the woods west of Spokane. Recognizing the shoes from Candy's case, they informed the police, who confirmed the shoes belonged to her. Shortly thereafter, an officer spotted Candy's body hidden in the underbrush, covered with pine branches. The cause of death was determined to be strangulation, with a torn piece of fabric from her skirt used to bind her. There were also signs of sexual abuse. Among the items found at the crime scene was a green car seat cover, but its relevance remained unclear. Candy's clothing had a small purple stain that smelled like grape-flavored chewing gum, though no connection was established. With no substantial leads, police investigated numerous suspects, including Alfred Braves, a 50-year-old man who took his own life on the day Candy's body was discovered. He lived close to Candy and had a troubling history. Despite this, no evidence linked him to the crime. The investigation then turned to serial killer Hugh Morse, known for chewing grape-flavored gum and committing crimes in Spokane shortly after Candy's death. Morse was later captured and sentenced to life, but denied any involvement in Candy's murder, and polygraph tests did not confirm his guilt. Another suspect, Howard Barnett, took his own life in February 1960 after being arrested on suspicion of molesting a minor. His wife suspected him of Candy's murder, but investigators found no evidence linking him to the case. In the following decades, the case was reopened periodically, but consistently ended in dead ends. Detectives also faced numerous false confessions, with 13 individuals claiming responsibility, but none provided details only the true killer would know. In the early 2000s, the case was reopened with a focus on modern technology. Thankfully, evidence from 1959 had been well preserved, and experts extracted a DNA profile from Candy's clothing. Despite extensive efforts, the DNA did not match any suspects in the database. In 2021, a new detective took on the case and decided to employ a groundbreaking DNA analysis technique known as genetic genealogy. This method had successfully resolved numerous cold cases, and the detective hoped it would finally bring closure to one of the longest-standing investigations in history. He reached out to several specialized laboratories to apply this method, but each attempt was met with disappointment. The original DNA sample had degraded significantly over time, making it difficult to extract usable data. Determined, the detective approached the final laboratory, and this time, there was a breakthrough. Utilizing cutting-edge technology, the experts were able to analyze the sample and generate a DNA profile of the perpetrator. This profile was uploaded to genealogical databases, initiating a search for distant relatives of the DNA donor. Through meticulous research and analysis of thousands of individuals, they narrowed the search to one specific family. The investigation revealed that the DNA sample likely belonged to one of 3 brothers from the family. However, all 3 brothers were deceased. Despite this setback, the detectives discovered that one of the brothers had a daughter. Contacting her, the woman was shocked at the possibility of her father being the murderer. Nevertheless, she willingly provided her own DNA sample. The results confirmed that she was closely related to the individual whose DNA was found on Candy's clothing. With this confirmation, the detectives obtained a court order to exhume the father's grave. DNA profiling from the remains identified the perpetrator as John Hoff. A complete match was found between Hoff's DNA and the semen on Candy's clothing. Despite a long list of suspects over the years, Hoff had never been considered. The investigation revealed that he was 20 years old at the time of Candy's murder and lived less than a mile from her home. He also served in the Army at a nearby base. 2 years after Candy's death, Hoff attacked another woman, binding and sexually assaulting her. He was arrested and sentenced to only 6 months in prison and dishonorably discharged from the Army. Hoff later led a seemingly ordinary life, marrying and having 4 children. He changed jobs frequently and suffered a severe chemical burn to his face while working in a food packaging plant. His life ended in June 1970 when he took his own life without leaving a note. Investigators also discovered that Candy may have known Hoff. She had been friends with his sister, who was 10 years old at the time. Years later, she recalled crying in her brother's arms after her friend's murder, unaware that he was the killer. Sadly, Candy's parents did not live to see the resolution of the case. Her mother passed away in 2006, and her father took his own life in 1963, 4 years after the murder. The reasons behind his death remain unknown, with speculation suggesting he couldn't cope with the loss of his daughter. The case, spanning over 62 years, was finally solved, involving multiple detectives and generations. During the press conference announcing Hoff as the killer, only one officer from the 1959 investigation was present. He expressed gratitude for living long enough to see the case resolved. Hoff's daughter initially struggled to believe her father was capable of such a crime, but eventually accepted it, condemning him as a monster who took an innocent life. She expressed regret that he was not held accountable during his lifetime. Interestingly, Hoff took his own life precisely when his daughter turned 9, the same age as Candy at the time of her murder. Whether there is any connection remains unknown. Alright guys, share your thoughts on this story in the comment section, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you for watching.